Are you tired of not being able to use your favorite C++ library in your Node.js project? Of course not. I wouldn't care either. But to the three of you who are watching this video, this is for you. Recently, I've been working on a Node.js project, and I really needed to integrate this particular C++ library. And for whatever reason, a bunch of tutorials were about using this build tool called JIP. I've never heard of JIP. What is JIP? But what I've heard of is CMake, and I'm sure most of you have heard of CMake. A lot of C++ libraries use CMake, so how the heck do I integrate CMake and JIP? So the answer is not to use JIP. I wanted to use CMake to create node add-ons, as well as being able to call the functions in the node add-on in TypeScript. And that's exactly what I'm going to be going over in this video and showing you. So let's get into it. Here I have a Node.js project with TypeScript support. There are two things that we need to keep in mind here in the tsconfig JSON file is that the target needs to be ESNext or ES6 and above, and then the module needs to be common.js. And this is needed to support Node C++ add-ons. All right, let's install some dependencies. The first one we need is CMake.js. So I'm just install CMake.js, and the other one we need is node-addon-api. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that. Now we're gonna create a add-ons folder. We're also going to add a source folder to hold all of our TypeScript files. And then we're gonna need a CMake list.txt, and this file is gonna contain all the information that CMake needs to compile our Node.js add-on. The first thing we need to do is we're just gonna set the minimum requirements and the policies. We're then going to set our project name and the CMake standard. Let's also add our definition. This is referring to the Node API, not the Node add-on API, which is the C++ wrapper on the Node API. I hope that makes sense. Yes, so a little weird, confusing with the naming. Add-on is the key part. And then we're gonna just include the directories, and then we're just gonna grab every C++ files in the add-ons directory. Let's then add the library, set the target, and target link libraries. This is a conditional, which we're only gonna do this on Windows. And the last thing that I personally like to do, and not a requirement, but I like to add this, which will basically is going to take our .node add-on out from the release or debug directory and just put it into a build folder. And that will just streamline the process of not having to define either a release or debug build folder when we require in TypeScript. Wonderful, that's all we need to configure our CMake list file. All right, let's go ahead and create our C++ files, which I'm just gonna name it my object.h, and then I'm gonna create another one, my object.cc. The first one is gonna be our header file, and in our header file we are going to add pragma as well as include, and in our include we're gonna include node-api.h. You might be wondering, okay, well, why is it red swigglies? Can I get access to this? And if you have this problem, all you would need is you're gonna create a .vs code folder, and then inside the .vs code folder, you're gonna create a CCPP properties.json file. You're going to be adding a few things in your CCPP properties JSON file, and here it is. You're gonna add a configuration, name whatever machine you're on. This should be the same. And then as for the framework path, you're going to add node module, node add-on API. This is just referring to the path to find the header file. So if you go into your node modules, you find node add-on API, you're gonna notice that there is the N API, node API.h here. And that's what we're referring to in our .h file here. Great, now that we have that sorted, we're going to add our myObject class. We are going to take in a constructor that takes in a nappy callback info, and this is going to be the way we can read the arguments that's passed in from our Node.js runtime. And in this class, we're adding two methods, greet and add. both will return a value, and then this static method getClass is a must to be able to register any object in C++ and make it available in Node.js environment. So if we go to our CC file, I'm going to go and add our include, and then I'm going to use namespace NAPI, and this is so we don't have to keep typing everywhere. I don't know why I keep calling it NAPI. Is it NAPI, NAPI, whatever, in API? Great. All right, let's implement the constructor. We get the node environment. This info allows us to grab the arguments that are passed in from our Node.js environment. Here we check how many arguments is being passed in. And if it's less than one, we're gonna throw an error. If there is an argument, and the first argument, is it a string? And if it's not a string, we're gonna throw an error. Otherwise, we're gonna store it in our greet name variable. Okay, let's go ahead and implement our greet method. Here, again, we're doing exact same thing, just checking the length of how many arguments is passed in. We're expecting one, and it needs to be a string. And if it is a string, we're storing it in this name variable right here. We're gonna print out hello, name, and then I am, and use the greeter name that was previously stored in from our constructor. The next method we're gonna implement is our add method, and we're just gonna do the same thing again, checking how many arguments we're passing in. In this case, we're passing in 2, and that's because we add 2 numbers together. Notice how we're returning a number here rather than a value, and that's because number inherits from value, so that's why we're able to return it in this way. One of the most important functions that we're gonna implement, getClass. This is really important. It defines basically the name of our object when we are using this in JavaScript or TypeScript. We'll also need to define what methods are available inside this class. And then the next function, this one is particularly important, is going to be init. And notice that this is not inside my object class. This is a global function that is available within this compilation unit. And when we use this node-api module macro to call the init function, which is going to define the name of our class and then export the name of the class and the definition of the class that is then returned to the node-api module to tell it this is the class name and this is what the class has. And this is how we're going to be able to use our C++ object in JavaScript or TypeScript. So great. I think that's pretty much all we have to do for now to get our build to work. So one thing I totally forgot to do is add a build script to the package.json file. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're gonna, under scripts, we're gonna define build. We're gonna go ahead and CMake JS compile here, and that will just let us actually compile our CMake C++ project. So let's go ahead and test that out. npm run build. Let's see if it will work. Oh my gosh, it did not work. And why is that? Look at that. It says napi.h file not found. If you're getting this error, then yes, there's one more thing we need to add in our package.json file. Under binary, we want to define the Node API version that we're using. We're using version 9. And if you're wondering, wait, how do I know which version I'm using? Well, there's two things. First, it's right here. It needs to be the same as the one you define in your CMake list.txt file. Second, to check what version is compatible with what node version, you can go to the Node API website and you'll see a matrix here. Version 9 is compatible with pretty much 18 and above. Now let's try building again. Wonderful, we now have a build folder. Now we have a YouTube.node add-on, and all we have to do now is call it in TypeScript. So let's go ahead and do that. So in our source folder, we're gonna create a bindings.ts file. In bindings.ts file, we're going to require the add-on. So this is reaching to the builds folder, grabbing the YouTube Node add-on that we just built. And yes, you have to use require. You cannot use import. This is because Node add-on does not support the import way of importing modules. For whatever reason, I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong. Please let me know down below in the comments if I'm wrong. But from my research and articles I've read so far, it seems like it just doesn't work, and I've tried it multiple different ways. Let's now define our interface of the object. So our object will be called myObject. Add the two methods that this has. So we have the greet method, which takes in a string, and then our add method, which takes in a number, and that's our interface. Now we're gonna export my object, and in the constructor, we're gonna need the name, which is a string, and we're gonna return my object. And then here, we're just gonna go add on my object. Okay, now that we have the interface and we have exported my object, let's go ahead and just call it, shall we? Create a index.ts file, and in here we're going to do import my object from bindings, and it should be pretty simple. So we're just going to create the object. Thank you, Copilot. We are going to do object.greet. And you see we have IntelliSense. I'm gonna call it Boba, because that's my name, not really. And then we're just gonna console log object.add. How about 39 and 1 and make it 40. Whoops. And to run this file, we're just gonna add one more thing under our package.json file. We're just gonna call it start. We're gonna add tsc and node-dist index.js, because our file is named index.js. And let's go ahead and run it. Oh, weird. We cannot find the name require. Do you want to install? npm. So let's go ahead and install this. I guess I didn't set up the project properly. Try it again. npm run start. Boom! Now we're able to call our C++ functions in TypeScript. How easy was that? That wasn't too bad. And honestly, all you would have to do to add more functions, you just need to add it here in your .h.cpp file, and make sure to define it in the getClass method, as well as add a new instance method, and then go to your bindings.ts and define it here. And that is how you create a C++ object in TypeScript. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay positive, keep on learning, and I'll see you in the next one. Boom!